doing our due diligence. I don't want those that were targeted by the war on drugs to be left out. Third, reinvestment. What are we doing to ensure that profits, which are going to deep pockets that may not live in underserved areas, are socially responsible and reinvested back into the community? Particularly those communities that were deeply impacted by the war on drugs. I want to ensure that a percentage of the funding goes not only into enforcement, but back into community parks, community health centers, libraries, youth development programs, mentorship, education, and literacy. The full reason I support legalization is because I believe we can transform culture from suppression and oppression to prevention and intervention.
Amen.
Particularly for folks of color and the underserved. That means that we need to be bold. We need to ensure we are creating social change and economic justice and giving people the ability to take part in the opportunities that legalization provides us with. We need to repair, not compound, the injustices of prohibition. And if that's not happening, we need to do better. Now that's my theory of change that informs why I believe in the legalization of cannabis. And I want to get into now some of our policies for Riverside County, but I'll tell you, I'm not fully convinced that we've done enough. And I am concerned. Mind you, I'm 1 out of 5. But as I mentioned, I like to think of myself as the one that will push the envelope. Now, let me offer some background on what our experience has been in getting Riverside County ready for cannabis. For many years, the County of Riverside maintained an across-the-board ban, adopted in 2006, on cannabis operations, including medical marijuana dispensaries. Just to make it clear, county government has zoning power over the unincorporated area of the county, not over cities. The ban was well before my time on the Board of Supervisors. 10 years ago, there was a much different social climate and political landscape on this issue. And much has happened, including the education and advocacy efforts of many of you, that has changed attitudes over the last 10 years. While the prohibition in place, the county has enforced the zoning ordinance against dispensaries that were operating in violation of the ban, cracking down on illegal operations popping up around the county. Many agencies are involved in these efforts, from code enforcement to Sheriff's Department, the District Attorney's Office, and County Council. It was incumbent to critically examine the course that we were on. Up until then, a lot of costs have been incurred and significant resources expended in enforcement, with no money coming in, which, in my opinion, that didn't make great sense. As I mentioned, we started seeing some changes around the country on cannabis. Colorado's marijuana legalization, passed by voters in 2012 and taken effect in 2014, was groundbreaking. Cities in California, including some of the cities whose mayors you heard from earlier today, began embracing cannabis. I served on the Coachella City Council right after I came home from the state legislature, in which we created an economic task force to figure out ways as to how we can bring cannabis to the city of Coachella and make it an economic driver for the city. In the 2016 election, California voters, by 57-42 margin, passed Proposition 64, which created a legal framework to enable the cannabis industry to move into a regulated commercial market. In Riverside County, the measure passed by a narrower margin, but still was favored by the majority, at nearly 53% approval. A little over 2 years ago, I joined the Riverside County Board of given that California voters had just spoken to allow cannabis. I saw opportunities for much needed revenue and economic development that could benefit Riverside County if we change direction on this. I was in full support of the effort to revise our cannabis ordinances to lift the ban and start having cannabis businesses in the unincorporated area with my hope for amnesty, inclusion, and reinvestment. For social change, if you will, and for economic justice.